You have exactly 77 days.
Yep. The clock starts immediately.
Right. From the moment you bring an 8-week-old golden retriever puppy home, you have roughly 11 weeks before a biological door in their brain just, well, slams shut, essentially forever.
Which is an incredibly sobering thought.
It really is, especially when you're just standing in your kitchen at like 3 in the morning, totally sleep deprived, watching this tiny, fluffy golden potato pea on your favorite rug.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it completely reframes the entire experience, doesn't it? You go from thinking, I just need to survive this week of crying and needle teeth, to realizing you are actively hardwiring the operating system this dog will use for the next 12 to 15 years.
Yeah.
The stakes are just wildly high.
And that biological ticking clock is exactly why we are dedicating today's deep dive to you. Whether you're actively in the trenches of puppyhood right now or, you're planning to bring a dog home soon.
Because the internet is just a swamp of conflicting advice.
It is. It's overwhelming. So today, we're pulling from an incredibly comprehensive set of notes from the Dog Health Academy. We're zeroing in specifically on their research covering golden retriever puppy development and growth.
Right, getting down to the actual science.
Exactly. And our mission today is simple. We are separating the critical biological must-dos from all the behavioral noise out there. We want to give you a roadmap that explains not just, what to do, but the actual science of why you have to do it.
Which is so important for keeping your sanity.
Totally. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we even touch on how physically massive these dogs get, we have to start with that ticking clock, the brain.
We really do. Because before you have a 90-pound adult dog, you have this tiny brain that is developing at a completely staggering, almost incomprehensible rate.
Yeah.
When you bring that puppy home at 8 weeks, they are sitting right in the middle of a critical socialization window. And that occurs roughly between 3 and 14 weeks of age.
77 days? I mean, it is such a fleeting window. But what is actually happening in the puppy's head during that time? Like, why does the door shut at 14 weeks?
Well, what's fascinating here is the literal neurobiology of it. During this specific window, a puppy's brain is forming millions of neural synapses a day.
Millions.
Millions. It is highly elastic. They are neurologically primed to absorb novel experiences and basically classify them as safe.
Okay.
But right around that 13-week mark, a biological process called neural pruning begins. The brain essentially looks at the pathways that have been built and says, okay, we have enough data about the world. And it starts shutting the door on forming new baseline associations.
Wow.
Yeah, the brain solidifies.
So if they haven't encountered something by 14 weeks, their default biological response after that pruning phase is going to lean toward, what, skepticism or fear?
Precisely.
Yeah.
If they haven't learned that, a guy in a giant winter coat or the sound of a garbage truck or walking on slippery tile is safe, their adult brain will inherently view those things as potential threats.
That makes a lot of sense.
You are literally setting their baseline cortisol levels, their stress response, for the rest of their life. Gentle, positive exposure during this exact window physically hardwires their emotional regulation.
I have to challenge the gentle part of that, though, because I think a lot of new owners hear socialization, they hear the clock ticking, and they panic.
Right, they try to do too much.
Exactly. They think, I need to get this dog to a crowded street festival and a dog park, and, I don't know, hand them to a mob of screaming toddlers at the playground before week 14.
Oh, please don't do that.
Right. Are we treating the puppy's brain like a sponge meant to soak up gentle drops of water rather than blasting it with a fire hose? Because the fire hose feels like the default setting for a panicked owner.
That is a brilliant analogy,
Yeah.
and you absolutely cannot use the fire hose. Overwhelming them with chaotic situations is actually deeply counterproductive.
Because of the permanent associations.
Exactly. Remember, they are forming permanent associations right now. If you take an 8-week-old puppy to a chaotic dog park and they get trampled by a larger dog, that trauma gets locked in right alongside the positive stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The goal isn't sheer volume of exposure. The goal is confidence building.
Right, so the mechanics of it matter. It's about letting them say, hear the garbage truck from down the street while feeding them a high-value treat, not standing a foot away from the truck's exhaust pipe.
Exactly. You are building a mental scaffolding of resilience. So a well-socialized puppy grows into an adult dog that encounters a totally new, unexpected situation, say a hot air balloon landing in a nearby field.
Sure.
And Their hardwired neurological response is curiosity, not a fight-or-flight panic attack.
Okay, so we're building this confident mental scaffolding, but because we can't tire out their brain entirely with just new sights and sounds, we naturally look to their physical energy.
Oh, the endless puppy energy.
Right. Golden retrievers are working dogs. They have a massive reservoir of energy, which brings us to physical growth. And this is where I think the biggest misconception in dog ownership lives.
You're talking about the tired puppy is a good puppy rule.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because yes, that is the golden rule everyone repeats. A tired puppy is a good puppy.
Everyone says it.
So you have this 12-week-old golden retriever bouncing off the walls, destroying your living room, and your immediate instinct is to strap on your running shoes, take them out to the pavement, and just run them until their tongue is hanging out.
Which is a terrible idea.
Right. Based on the biology we're looking at, you're saying doing that is catastrophic for their physical foundation.
It is genuinely one of the most dangerous traps well-meaning owners fall into. We want to drain that energy reservoir, sure, but doing it with high-impact exercise during these early months can cause permanent, irreversible damage.
And the reason comes down to growth plates, right?
Exactly.
Let's get into that. What exactly is a growth plate in this context?
Well, a golden retriever will reach almost its entire adult height in just the first 12 months.
Yeah.
They go from like 10 pounds to 65 or 70 pounds incredibly fast.
Explosive.
Explosive upward growth. So to accommodate that, a puppy skeleton isn't fully made of hard bone yet.
Yeah.
The ends of their long bones have these areas of soft, uncalcified cartilage. Those are the growth plates.
Okay.
They're spongy, they're fragile, they do not calcify and turn into solid bone until the dog is much older, often over a year.
So, using a construction metaphor, running a puppy on hard pavement is like driving a heavy cement truck over a newly poured foundation before it has cured.
That is exactly what is happening.
You aren't just tiring them out. You are permanently warping the scaffolding while it's still wet concrete.
Exactly. The sheer vertical growth means their physical scaffolding is highly vulnerable. Repetitive impact, long runs on asphalt, jumping off high couches, forced fetching for an hour straight. It compresses those soft cartilage plates.
Which leads to problems later.
Big problems. It can lead to joint deformities, early onset arthritis, and structural weakness that will plague the dog for its entire adult life.
Yeah.
Tired should never come at the expense of permanent joint strain.
Which is fascinating, but for the listener right now, it is also deeply frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Because we just established that we have a puppy with endless energy, and you've just taken away the owner's best tool for exhausting them. We can't physically run them into the ground. So how do we actually drain that reservoir of energy so they don't tear the house apart?
Well, since you can't physically exhaust them, you have to shift your entire strategy to mental drainage. You manage their behavior by engaging their cognition.
Okay, so mental work.
Right. Short, frequent, gentle play sessions on soft surfaces like grass absolutely do those. But the heavy lifting for draining their energy comes from positive, reward-based training and strict routines.
Okay, but I want to push back on the training aspect a bit.
Sure.
I know we aren't talking about basic sit and stay 101 here. We all know what basic training is. But if you have a dog that is biologically wired to retrieve and work, how does 5 minutes of teaching them to, I don't know, touch their nose to your hand actually tire them out more than a mile walk?
Because cognitive load burns a massive amount of calories and energy.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you use evidence-based positive reinforcement training, you are asking a puppy to use impulse control. You aren't just physically maneuvering them into a sitting position, you are making their brain solve a puzzle.
How do I get that human to give me that piece of cheese?
Yes, for a puppy, sustained mental focus for 5 or 10 minutes is neurologically exhausting.
That makes perfect sense. It's the difference between mindlessly walking on a treadmill versus taking a difficult math test. The math test makes you want to take a nap. And that brings up the routines, specifically crate training. And I don't want to talk about how to crate train because our listeners know the mechanics of it. I want to talk about the neurology of the crate because new owners carry so much guilt about utilizing it.
Oh, the guilt is so real, especially when you are standing in the kitchen listening to them whine. But we have to understand the canine psychology of a den. Predictability creates security for a dog.
Right.
When a crate is introduced properly, not as a punishment, but as a predictable safe space,
Yeah.
it actually lowers their ambient stress levels.
Yeah.
You take away the burden of them having to patrol the entire house.
You're shrinking their world.
Yes, you are telling them, this small box is your only responsibility right now.
Huh.
It allows their nervous system to actually downregulate.
Which is the perfect segue to the single most chaotic behavior owners deal with and where they lose all their patience: bite inhibition.
Oh, yes. The shark phase.
Golden puppies are notoriously mouthy. Their teeth are like tiny little surgical needles. But wait, if a 12-week-old puppy is actively biting my ankles and my response is to gently redirect them to a chew toy, aren't I fundamentally rewarding the fact that they just bit me? I'm giving them a toy.
It definitely feels that way to human logic. But you have to view it through the lens of a littermate. Puppies explore the world with their mouths. It's their primary sensory organ for touch.
Okay.
But in a litter, if puppy A bites puppy B too hard, puppy B yelps loudly and instantly stops playing. They withdraw their attention.
The ultimate punishment for a dog.
Exactly. Total withdrawal of social engagement. So when we redirect to a toy, we aren't saying, good job biting my ankle, here is a prize. We are mimicking that natural feedback loop.
Oh, I see.
We're saying human skin is fragile, and when your teeth touch it, the fun stops immediately. But this rubber toy, you could bite this as hard as you want, and the game continues. It is a cognitive puzzle for them.
They're learning boundaries.
They are learning to regulate the force of their jaw, which is a critical developmental milestone. It is not aggression. It is data gathering.
Data gathering with needles. But this brings us to what I consider the absolute secret weapon of puppy raising, the one biological function that makes the socialization, the bite inhibition, and the training actually stick: sleep.
Sleep is the linchpin of this entire operation. Without it, everything falls apart.
And I hear people constantly say, an overtired puppy is just like a toddler who skipped their nap having a meltdown. That's a cliche. What is biologically happening in a puppy's body when they don't get the 18 to 20 hours of sleep they actually need?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes back to endocrinology and how the brain stores data. When a puppy is overtired, their body perceives that exhaustion as physical stress.
Really?
Yes, their adrenal glands start pumping out cortisol and adrenaline. They are literally entering a state of fight or flight endocrine distress.
So that zoomy phase at 8 p.m. where they are biting the couch and ignoring every command, they aren't being stubborn. They are biologically high on stress hormones.
Precisely. They physically cannot regulate their impulses because their prefrontal cortex is being overridden by adrenaline.
Wow.
But the second, and arguably more important part of this, is memory consolidation. When you teach a puppy a new skill, or you have a great socialization session with that garbage truck we mentioned earlier,
Right.
the brain doesn't lock that memory in during the actual event. Memory consolidation happens primarily during REM sleep.
Wait, really? So if you train them, but you don't enforce a nap afterward, the brain doesn't file the data away properly?
Exactly. You are pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. Overtired puppies literally cannot learn. Building in enforced quiet rest periods in that crate we talked about is not just a break for the owner's sanity. It is a neurological requirement for the dog's development. You have to enforce the nap.
I think every new dog owner needs "enforce the nap" tattooed on their forearm.
I highly recommend it.
All right, so we've mapped out the mental foundation. We understand the wet concrete vulnerability of their joints, and we know how to drain them cognitively to manage behavior. Now, we have to look at the medical scaffolding required to keep this whole ecosystem functioning safely.
Routine veterinary care. It is this safety net that supports everything we've just discussed.
And again, we aren't going to sit here and list off a generic vaccine schedule because, as the notes from the Dog Health Academy make very clear, your specific region, your lifestyle, and your licensed veterinarian dictate that protocol.
Exactly. It varies wildly.
Whether you need a Lyme disease vaccine or specific parasite prevention depends entirely on where you live. But the concept of routine is what matters.
Right. It's about establishing baselines. Early veterinary visits allow a professional to monitor that explosive growth curve we talked about earlier.
Right. Making sure the bones are okay.
They are making sure the dog isn't gaining weight too quickly, which would add disastrous pressure to those soft cartilage growth plates, or growing too slowly, which could indicate a systemic issue.
One brilliantly proactive piece of medical advice in these notes that I want to highlight is dental habituation. They point out that right now, while they are losing those needle-like baby teeth and the adult teeth are erupting, is the perfect time to get them used to having their mouth handled.
Which loops right back to our early socialization window.
Right.
If you gently lift their lips, massage their gums, and make mouth handling a positive, rewarding game now, you are saving yourself and your vet years of agonizing wrestling matches when the dog is 90 pounds and needs a dental exam.
So what does this all mean for the owner on a random Tuesday night? You're sitting in your living room, The puppy is asleep, but they've been a little sluggish all afternoon. How does an owner distinguish between my puppy is just wonderfully exhausted from a big day of cognitive training and we have a medical red flag and I need to call the emergency vet right now?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it is the source of so much anxiety for new owners.
Def-
The answer goes back to those strict routines we build for behavioral management. When you have a predictable routine, you feed at the same time, you train at the same time, you enforce naps at the same time, you create a highly accurate data baseline of what is normal for your specific dog.
You know exactly what their baseline appetite looks like or what their baseline 6 p.m. energy level is.
Exactly. When you have data, deviations become obvious. The Dog Health Academy lists specific red flags to watch for: persistent lethargy that doesn't resolve after an enforced nap, ongoing appetite changes, an unusual gait or limping that hints at joint issues, or any profound behavioral shift.
Okay.
If they were just sleepy after a mental puzzle, but they eagerly eat their dinner and walk normally, they are likely just recovering.
Mm.
If they refuse a high-value treat and won't get out of the crate, that's a deviation from the baseline. That is a red flag.
And obviously, the overarching rule is when in doubt, call the vet. But keeping track of all these baselines, the normal behaviors, the vaccine dates, the parasite prevention schedules, the weight curve, it is an immense cognitive load for an owner who is already sleep deprived.
It is basically taking on a part-time job in medical administration.
Which is why the source material mentions utilizing tools like the VitalPet app. It essentially acts as a digital filing cabinet for your puppy. You offload the mental burden of remembering when the next heartworm pill is due or what they weighed 3 weeks ago into the app.
It is incredibly helpful for maintaining that baseline data we just talked about. But of course, the Dog Health Academy emphasizes a very strict caveat. An app is an organizational tool. It is never a diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
It never replaces the guidance of a licensed veterinarian.
Right. It just means when you do show up at the vet completely exhausted, you have all your answers ready when they ask about medication timelines. You can actually be present with your puppy instead of stressing about paperwork.
Precisely. It frees up your mental space.
All right, we have covered a massive amount of biology, neurology, and behavior today regarding the golden retriever puppy stage. Let's synthesize this into the core takeaways for anyone listening. First, respect the 77-day countdown.
Yes.
That 3 to 14-week socialization window is a period of intense neuroplasticity. Fill it with gentle, positive, confidence-building experiences before the neural pruning begins. Second, treat their physical frame like wet concrete. Protect those uncalcified growth plates by absolutely avoiding high-impact exercise and long runs on pavement.
Third, because you can't run them into the ground, drain their energy cognitive first. Lean into positive, reward-based training to build trust, and mimic natural littermate feedback for bite inhibition.
Fourth, respect the endocrinology of sleep. Enforce the naps to prevent cortisol spikes and allow their brain to actually consolidate the memories you are trying to teach them. And finally, use routine vet care and tracking tools to establish firm baselines so you can easily spot medical red flags.
It is a phenomenal blueprint. But, when you look at all of this together, the neuroplasticity, the careful joint protection, the mimicry of bite inhibition, the strict sleep schedules to manage cortisol, it leaves me with a rather provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, in the dog world, we spend an exorbitant amount of time obsessing over genetics. We research breeders for months looking for the perfect lineage, trying to buy that classic, flawless golden retriever temperament.
Right.
But when you consider the sheer biological impact of what happens in that tiny 11-week window, when you consider the neurological pathways we actively hardwire, the routines we enforce, and the cortisol spikes we mitigate, it really makes you wonder.
How much of it is actually nature versus nurture?
Exactly. How much of that gentle, bomb-proof, classic golden retriever temperament that we all universally love is genuinely genetic, and how much of it is actually just an epigenetic mirror of our own patience, our own careful nurturing, and the science we applied during those first few chaotic months?
That is a brilliant and heavy question to leave on. The dog they become is quite literally a biological reflection of the foundation we painstakingly build. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive into the underlying science of the puppy years. Keep exploring the mechanisms behind the madness, keep learning, and most importantly, remember to enforce those naps. Until next time, we'll catch you on the next deep dive.